Not in my wildest dreams, Matty, but just like you guys. I dreamt as a kid of faraway treasures, islands and pirates.
For years, viewers have been told that the greatest secret of Oak Island lies buried deep beneath the ground. But what if the truth was never underground at all? What if it has been visible the entire time? Spoken quietly, almost casually, by one of the very people leading the search. Among the many figures who shaped the Oak Island investigation, Gary Drayton became famous for turning small metal finds into moments of excitement that captured millions of viewers. Yet there is one detail rarely discussed. Gary has never actually claimed that a massive treasure was waiting to be discovered. Not once. While the world watched expecting gold, his own words suggested something far more subtle and far more revealing. Today, we are going to examine the moment when those words quietly exposed a deeper reality about the Oak Island mystery. Why the search continues year after year, why every discovery seems to raise more questions than answers, and why the biggest illusion may not be the treasure itself, but the story surrounding it. Subscribe, because what comes next is something many people overlook. For years, Gary Drayton has been the driving force behind many of the show's physical discoveries. With his trademark smile and sharp detecting skills, he has repeatedly pulled intriguing artifacts from the soil. His famous phrase, "a real Bobby Dazzler," became a symbol of excitement and progress on the island. Yet appearances can be misleading. Behind the enthusiasm and dramatic moments, another story may have been unfolding. According to quiet industry rumors, Drayton has grown frustrated with keeping certain realities unspoken. The alleged issue isn't a single discovery. It's the central assumption of the entire show. The belief that the Lagina brothers and their team are constantly on the brink of a world-changing breakthrough. What viewers rarely see is the reality of treasure hunting. For every coin, button, or brooch shown on television, there are countless hours spent uncovering nothing more than modern debris. Another detail many people miss is how unlikely some discoveries appear. As a world-class metal detectorist, Gary would clearly understand the difference between an artifact accidentally lost centuries ago and one that seems almost too perfectly positioned. Some insiders claim that certain high-profile finds have appeared at suspiciously convenient moments. A Spanish coin here, a Templar-style relic there, just enough to support whichever theory an episode is exploring. At times, the island seems to produce exactly the item the storyline requires, precisely when it's needed. One controversial suggestion even raises the possibility that some objects might not originally belong to the island at all. It's a serious claim, but one that skeptics argue could explain the extraordinary streak of luck surrounding certain discoveries. Consider the famous lead cross found at Smith's Cove, an area that had already been searched extensively over many decades. Yet the artifact was reportedly lying only a few inches beneath the surface, waiting to be detected. In the world of professional treasure hunting, odds like that are almost unimaginable. Across more than 10 seasons, the series has built an elaborate narrative involving Templar knights, pirate fortunes, and royal secrets. Critics argue that much of this may be less a continuous historical chain and more a dramatic storyline constructed from scattered historical references. If that's true, the true brilliance of Oak Island may not lie underground at all. It may lie in the way the story itself has been crafted and presented. Even the famous curse, the legend claiming that 7 people must die before the treasure is found, perfectly illustrates how powerful storytelling can be in keeping the mystery alive. Although 6 people have sadly died during the 2-century search, Presenting those tragedies as part of a supernatural curse adds suspense and danger that keeps audiences fascinated. Ordinary accidents are transformed into a dramatic prophecy, heightening the legend. From another perspective, however, Oak Island may simply be a small, heavily explored island whose repeated disappointments have gradually been turned into mythology. The real picture becomes clearer when you look at the finances. Not any supposed buried riches, but the powerful economic machine built around the show itself. The series has become a worldwide hit, generating major revenue through broadcasting deals, merchandise, and tourism. Nearby communities have seen waves of visitors arriving to see the famous Money Pit or the War Room for themselves. In many ways, the island has evolved into a brand. That success naturally creates pressure to keep delivering discoveries, or at least discoveries that appear exciting enough to sustain interest. Without a regular stream of Bobby Dazzlers, the momentum could fade, and the entire Oak Island enterprise might slow down. As the team member most often responsible for uncovering artifacts, Gary Drayton sits right at the center of that pressure. Some observers believe the tension comes from the challenge of balancing authentic exploration with the demands of television storytelling. When editing shapes ambiguous metal fragments into historical relics and every setback is reframed as a new clue, the line between investigation and entertainment can begin to blur. Another key piece of the legend is the Money Pit itself, the story that launched the entire mystery. According to tradition, 3 teenagers discovered a strange depression in 1795 and uncovered a shaft lined with wooden platforms every 10 feet. Yet historians often point out that detailed written accounts appeared decades later, raising the possibility that the story was expanded over time to attract investors to early treasure hunting efforts. Even the original location of the supposed shaft has long since been lost, meaning that modern excavations are essentially searching for something whose earliest documentation is uncertain. Over the past 200 years, numerous companies have dug more than 100 shafts in the same region, leaving behind a maze of tunnels, collapses, and debris. When modern drilling encounters wood or empty spaces underground, it can be nearly impossible to determine whether the material dates back to an original deposit, if one ever existed, or to one of the many later expeditions. In this sense, the remnants of earlier search attempts may actually be helping to sustain the mystery. The same reasoning applies to the famous flood tunnels said to protect the treasure. Geologists note that the island's porous limestone allows seawater to seep easily into deep excavations. Any hole dug below sea level would naturally fill with water, even without elaborate engineering. Materials like coconut fibers discovered near the shoreline, often cited as evidence of artificial structures, might also have been introduced by earlier searchers who used such materials for packing or construction. Seen this way, many so-called clues may simply be the echoes of previous treasure hunts. Instead of uncovering an ancient cache, the team could be excavating layers of history left behind by generations of hopeful explorers, old nails, timber, leather fragments, and other everyday remnants now reinterpreted as possible evidence of grand conspiracies. The triangular swamp offers another example. The program has portrayed it as a deliberately engineered feature, perhaps concealing a ship or hidden chamber. Yet some analysts argue that the stone patterns, unusual shapes, and metal finds in the area could have more ordinary explanations. For centuries, parts of the island supported logging, farming, and small-scale industry, activities that naturally left tools, ox shoes, spikes, and other metal objects scattered in the soil. Such items may reflect the island's working past rather than secret treasure operations. Even Nolan's Cross, the arrangement of 5 massive boulders said to form a giant directional marker, can appear mystical at first glance. But geological processes frequently scatter large stones in patterns that later observers interpret as meaningful. What seems like an intentional symbol may simply be a natural formation that acquired significance only after the treasure legend took hold. There is no verified historical evidence showing that the rock formation was ever placed by Templar knights. The idea is largely a modern interpretation applied to what could simply be a naturally scattered group of boulders. Oak Island is filled with puzzles like this, mysteries that often appear convincing at first but grow far less certain under close examination. It can sometimes feel like a giant connect-the-dots exercise, where only the dots that support a particular storyline are emphasized. Those working on the ground would naturally see how this process unfolds. Imagine being directed to search a very specific patch of land, not because of strong archaeological reasoning, but because the episode's narrative requires a discovery to reinforce a theory such as Nolan's Cross. It's a subtle influence, yet powerful. Viewers believe the findings are shaping the investigation, while in reality, the storyline may be guiding where the team searches next. This dynamic helps explain why the series often feels permanently on the verge of a breakthrough without ever reaching a final conclusion. The structure of the narrative keeps the mystery moving forward, constantly generating new clues, fresh possibilities, and unanswered questions that sustain momentum season after season. So if the legendary treasure itself may not be the ultimate prize, what is? From a different perspective, the answer is surprisingly simple. The search has become the treasure. Oak Island has evolved beyond a remote patch of land into a multi-million-dollar entertainment phenomenon. What began as a passionate quest for hidden riches has grown into one of cable television's most recognizable long-running series, drawing global audiences, tourism, and ongoing commercial success. From a business standpoint, resolving the mystery completely, whether by discovering a definitive treasure or proving none exists, would bring the story to an end. The tourism surge would fade, the excitement would diminish, and the brand built around the legend would lose its driving force. In that sense, the mystery itself has become the product, and keeping it alive ensures the engine continues to run. Each new artifact, theory, or cliffhanger adds another layer, extending the journey rather than concluding it. Seen this way, the search begins to resemble a performance as much as an expedition, carefully unfolding over years, blending history, speculation, and just enough tangible discovery to keep everything believable. The physical finds, especially those uncovered by skilled detectorists like Gary Drayton, serve as the grounding evidence that keeps even the boldest theories from drifting too far from reality. Without those occasional Bobby Dazzlers, the show might simply appear as an expensive excavation project with little to show for it. If the rumors about behind-the-scenes frustrations were ever true, speaking openly would represent a difficult decision, choosing authenticity over continuing a narrative that no longer felt entirely comfortable. Regardless, the larger story of Oak Island remains one of determination, curiosity, and the enduring appeal of an unsolved mystery. The adventure has inspired countless viewers with its themes of persistence, teamwork, and the dream of discovering something extraordinary. At the same time, it also serves as a reminder of how easily compelling storytelling can shape what we believe, especially when history, speculation, and entertainment blend together so seamlessly. Perhaps the most meaningful takeaway is simple. Real value isn't always buried beneath the ground. Often, it lies in honesty, integrity, and the courage to question the stories we're told. Consider how powerful a well-told mystery can be. Once a compelling narrative takes root, every new detail, no matter how small, begins to feel like confirmation that something extraordinary must exist just out of reach. A fragment of wood becomes a centuries-old platform. A rusted coin becomes proof of ancient travelers. And an underground void suddenly feels like the doorway to history's greatest secret. Over time, the repetition of these moments builds emotional momentum, and that momentum itself becomes evidence in the minds of viewers. This is the real engine that has kept Oak Island alive for generations. Long before television cameras arrived, investors, explorers, and dreamers were already captivated by the possibility of hidden treasure. Each failed attempt did not end the legend. Instead, it added another chapter, another layer of intrigue, another reason for the next group to believe they might finally succeed. The modern series simply continues that centuries-old cycle, presenting the search in a more cinematic form while the underlying pattern remains the same. What makes the story so enduring is not the certainty of treasure, but the possibility of it. Possibility fuels imagination, and imagination is far more powerful than any single discovery. Even if one day the island were completely excavated and nothing remarkable were found, the legend itself would still survive in books, documentaries, and conversations because people are drawn to unanswered questions far more than to tidy conclusions. And that leaves us with one final thought. Does uncovering the possible reality diminish the adventure, or does it make the mystery even more fascinating than before?